I'm going to tell you why I believe that the world, especially people in the West, America, the UK, Germany, France, and so forth, a lot of people who might be watching this are focused on the wrong war, and that the conflicts and the things happening in West Africa right now are actually going to be more impactful for the future of the entire planet than anything that is going on in the Middle East or in Ukraine or anywhere else. Make sure that you're subscribed. Make sure you're following. Sign up to my newsletter. You can go to themerc.io to find the links to my newsletter and the Patreon if you want to support the channel. Now, what I'm going to tell you is this. People might not have read the news recently, and I know that I made a broadcast about this. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso have left ECOWAS. ECOWAS is the economic bloc of West African nations. Now, this is a major development, and something that I'm surprised isn't being talked about more in the mainstream. But let me not say I'm surprised, because I actually know why that is happening. But I want to go in this video to just explain my comments early on as to why I believe that this is actually the biggest thing that is happening in the world right now. Because this event is not isolated to just this situation. It is connected to a lot of other things that are going on in Africa. So it is, I wouldn't say it's the icing on the cake, but it is a natural progression and a very interesting progression that has happened a lot faster than I expected. So ECOWAS within West Africa, just so you understand, is essentially, you know, it's like I said, it's an economic bloc. It's how they do deals. They move in tandem with each other in order to put, it's almost like a trade union. So if you know how unions work in any business, that is sort of how ECOWAS works. And Nigeria happens to be the head of ECOWAS, the president of the ECOWAS bloc. There have been a number of coups in West Africa in the last 24 months. Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, Guinea. Gabon is not West. Like, I'm not even going to talk about Gabon because I've made a video about why I don't even view Gabon's coup as the same as these other ones. Those coups have happened and they've installed military leaders. In fact, Burkina Faso had 2 coups back to back because Captain Traore in Burkina Faso did a coup on the guy that did a coup before him. Niger has a guy called General Tiani, or Tian, I don't know, like, I think that's how you pronounce his name, who took over from President Bazoum, who was very close with France and was a darling of the West, really. They loved Bazoum, and for obvious reasons. And Mali, Goita, I think Assimi Goita of Mali, has taken over the presidency of that country. Now, of those 3 presidents that I just named, the Mali and Burkina Faso presidents are young guys. These guys are under 40 years old, mid-30s presidents. The Niger guy is a little older than that, is older than these people. But all of them share this concept of anti-neo-colonialism. They share this concept of fighting back against or breaking the shackles of former colonial masters. In this case, with all these 3 nations, France. Now, if any of you have not watched my video, the CFA Franc, called the Franc Zone, you must watch that video, because I'm not going to go into the details of the way that France has been screwing over African countries, but that video breaks it down very well. And if you're watching this and you've not seen that video, I am linking the video to this video as well, so you can link to it straight from here, and you can go immediately and watch that video and then come back to this video. Or if you want to watch this video to the end, watch it, but then watch that video and then come back to watch this video, because this video will make a lot more sense to you after you've watched my video called The Franc Zone, How France Secretly Controls West Africa, or most of West Africa. This has been a long time coming. And, I'm not surprised when I did my research and I made that video, because I wasn't aware of what the CFA Franc was. I didn't know that these things were happening. I did know that France had a very tenuous relationship with its former colonies. I knew that. I knew that there was a lot of racial issues both in France and outside of France in relation to how France deals with black people or former colonies. I know the fact that France pretty much exploits their colonies. Even when you look at the football team, it's an African team that has won those World Cups. They're African. Whether those players are from Algeria, from other African nations like Senegal, Congo, Togo, Mali, all of these sort of places, that is where their players come from. One of the greatest players in French history, Zinedine Zidane, is Algerian. Thierry Henry is from, I think, Suriname or something. I'm not specific, but I think so. But he's from an African country. So the players that you're even looking at, Mbappe, who is now one of the greatest players currently playing football, he's African. Thuram is African. Desailly, he's African. So France has this relationship where it's like, okay, listen, you'll use Africans when it's beneficial, but when it comes time to actually give the dues back, there's a problem with that. And currently, with all the Le Pen and all these sort of people in France who are demanding that French immigrants go back to their country, go back to Africa. What we're going to talk about in this video is why that is based on a lack of information being given to the population of France, where the French people do not understand that the only reason why they are in the position they're in is because of the exploitation of those African nations, which has impoverished them and is the impetus for a lot of those people to seek a better life in France. You should be thanking them that they're not pushing to cut off the plug, which has actually started happening now anyway. So what I'm saying is that, look, when those coups happened, it was because of unrest. So the coups happened, and automatically France's reaction is not to take a step back and say, you know what? These coups happened because of the way that we didn't do the things we were supposed to be doing in this country, because we have military bases all over these African nations. We didn't stop the insurgencies. We didn't give them security. We didn't give them their due with the exchange rates and the import-export taxes and the debts and all. We didn't give them what they deserve. France have more gold in their reserves than Mali does. I don't even know if Mali has a gold reserve, but France do not produce any gold. How is that possible? You are not a gold producing nation, and you have more gold in your vaults than the countries that produce gold. That should tell you about the imbalance. So when these nations came out and they had these coups, the immediate thing that they did, and Captain Traoré was one of the first to do this, that, cutting off ties with France. Troops, get out of our country. So they kicked these troops out there. Listen, all these bases, close these embassies. We don't want your ambassador here. We do not want your troops here anymore. You have not done anything to improve the welfare of our people. Why are you here? We don't need you anymore. So Captain Traoré does this. Mali does the same thing. And immediately, what you then end up with is France reacting by getting what I call lapdogs. Unfortunately, I'm going to just use these words because my country is involved, Nigeria, if it is even a country, because I've talked about the origin of Nigeria. Again, guys, I have a video on the origin of Nigeria. If you're watching this, you've got to go and watch that video too, because again, there's certain things I say and I don't want to rehash them every video. But for people who are subscribers to my channel, you understand that we are learning together. And when I reference certain things, it is with the assumption that you already have done your due diligence with my videos. So you are up to speed with certain pieces of information as we go forward, because I'm learning myself. So I do not come to the table as if I know everything. This is exciting for me because you are going on the journey with me as I discover things about Africa that were hidden from me as I grew up and things that continue to be concealed. You are going through that experience with me. But go and watch the history of the origin of Nigeria when I say that whether it's a country is debatable. But again, understanding the formation of Nigeria then gives you a better perspective on how Nigeria has been placed at the head of ECOWAS in order to do the bidding of former colonies or former colonial masters, Britain, France, so on and so forth. I saw a video of Bola Tinubu running to hug Macron in a way that I've never seen a president run to hug another president in my life. It was mind-bending to me because I'm thinking that what relationship does Nigeria even have with France to be so friendly? And then I was like, I did my research a little bit more and I found that apparently, and tell me if I'm wrong, guys, I might be wrong on this piece of information. Macron was actually posted in Nigeria at a point before he became president. And I think that was when Bola Tinubu was governor of Lagos State. And they became friendly from that relationship. So Bola Tinubu actually knows Macron personally. Bola Tinubu knows him from his time in Nigeria. Whether you know that or not, when you watch that video of running to hug this man, you don't need a rocket scientist to tell you there is a personal relationship here. and a personal relationship that might taint or color the decisions that this African president makes on behalf of ECOWAS and on behalf of Nigeria. So when ECOWAS started pushing at the behest of Nigeria to sanction Niger, I did live shows on that about how ashamed I was that Nigeria was participating in the subjugation of Niger at the behest of France. I did a video where I talked about the fact of how disrespectful it was that French newspapers, where Le Monde and all of these sort of guys were saying that we are waiting to see if Tinubu proves himself as the new president of Nigeria by his decisions and how he moves and what he does. I said that in and of itself, that rhetoric tells you a lot about the relationship between Africa and the West and between the West and ECOWAS. So ECOWAS became very, very antagonistic, towards these nations, Niger and so forth. But there are certain facts that you probably are not aware of. The fact that Niger is a major producer of uranium. Uranium is one of the key components for nuclear energy, guys. It's one of the key components for nuclear energy. France relies on nuclear energy. And do you realize that a major percentage, I think it's something like 30% of French energy comes from the uranium provided by Niger? Nigerians, people in Niger, they do not have universal light. They do not have universal power. A country that produces uranium and produces 30% of the power to a country as developed as France cannot power themselves. Guys, make it make sense. If we're not dealing with corruption here, make it make sense to me. Bazoum, Mr. President. Mr. Bazoum, make it make sense, because I'm not Nigerian, I'm Nigerian. We are next to each other. You're just above us. Listen, we are going through the same things. So do not make any mistake that what I'm saying about Niger does not apply to Nigeria. So when you have a coup now, Baitian comes in and does what he does, it's not rocket science. It shouldn't be a surprise. It shouldn't be a shock. The only shock it should be is that it took so long for it to happen. So Burkina Faso does the same thing. They kick the French out and so on and so forth, and Mali and so on. And Niger then say that, you know what, we are now going to take care of these militants. The militants and the insurgencies that you claimed you were taking care of France, and you were in our country for what, a decade? And you were not able to remove these people. General Tian and his people got rid of those guys within a month. What the might of the French army couldn't do in years, Niger did it within a month. I don't want to say too much because I'm just putting things on the table for you. You come to your own conclusions as to what that means. You see, the thing is, right, before I had this platform, I would be seeing things as an African and I felt I was too small to make a difference. I felt like, what am I going to say that's going to mean anything? I've grown up in a country, Nigeria, where we don't have light. We don't have running water. You have your own generator in Nigeria to power your house. You're lining up, you're sending your driver to go and line up for diesel because of diesel shortage in an oil-producing country. You're sending your driver to go and line up for petrol for hours, for days in an oil-producing country. The people you're selling the oil to, the only complaint is when the price of their oil goes up. They're never lining up for it. In America, are they lining up for oil? In Britain, are they lining up for oil? No. Their issue is when the price goes up a few pennies. We don't even have the oil, but we're producing it. Guys, that's what Africa is. Because if you go to the Middle East, who are also major oil producers, nobody is lining up for oil in the Middle East because they will not stand for that. If we are a major oil producer, you better make damn well sure that we have oil for our cars and our electricity. Make sure that we have electricity. So what is heartening me now and what is giving me hope is that there's a generation of African coming through, the younger generation below me, because General Captain Traore is the generation behind me. I'm the generation above Captain Traore. I am glad that his generation understand their responsibility to make things different for the people coming behind him, because we did not do what we were supposed to do. So when I look at this ECOWAS exit, what did you expect them to do? ECOWAS is being used by the West to sanction them, to squeeze them. You're using your brothers and sisters to cut you off. Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Senegal, Ivory Coast. That's what's going on. It takes Algeria, a North African country, to say that we are standing with Niger. Shout out to Algeria. I mean, they have their reasons, and we know we talk a lot about the issues between North Africa and West Africa, but Algeria stepped up to the plate. Morocco now, and I'm going to talk about Morocco, are stepping up to the plate. And you see, what I love about these North Africans is that it's always politics with them. You think that they're doing this because they love West Africa, so we don't want you to get in the way of what is going to happen for the continent. That's my problem with you, is that just get out of the way. If you do not want to be part of this, go and do your own thing, and just don't block us, and then don't make things harder for us to do what we've got to do. That's my thing. So when I see people do the right thing, like what Algeria has done and what Morocco has done, yo, I'm all for it. I'll praise you. Like I'm saying in the video, shout out to Morocco and Algeria. This is how you do things. So Algeria did that. This ECOWAS thing happens, all these countries exit. Immediately, people are talking about, oh, you know what? How are the West going to react? Because you understand something, right? Mali, Niger, I think Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso are landlocked. So Burkina Faso are landlocked. Because Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso are landlocked, you have a situation of access to the sea. That is a way that they could be sanctioned. Because you get all those West African nations along the Atlantic Ocean, like us, and you say, as ECOWAS nations, help us to sanction access to resources to those landlocked nations. Morocco said, we're not part of that. We have our access to the ocean. We are going to give access to these countries. We are going to hook them up. Shout out to Morocco. They came out immediately and said, we're not part of all of that. We're going to let you know that we're working with Burkina Faso. We're going to work with these guys. Don't worry. Basically, they were saying, don't worry about the ocean. We've got you. Nigeria, what did you say? Ghana, Ivory Coast, Togo, Sierra Leone. This is what this is proving. We're compromised. It means that we are not pro-Pan-Africa as Nigerians. Not as Nigerians. Let me get that. As a Nigerian government, sorry. Nigerians are pro, obviously. But as an administration, as a country, we are not moving in tandem with the push for Pan-Africanism, for helping the continent. We are moving with the interests of the West, of UK, of France, of America. That is what we're doing. Because when things like this happen, it really highlights where we stand. Because this is a major, major, major move. And the reason why I say it's a major move is that I'm going to tell you something else that happened. The Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, and so forth created Alliance of Sahel States. And the Alliance of Sahel States is essentially all their militaries combine with the united goal of protecting each other. And they created that when they were getting sanctioned by ECOWAS and getting sanctioned by France and all this sort of stuff. And they said, do what you're doing, but we are all protecting each other, because they were threatening to send troops into Niger. Remember that when Nigeria and all these other countries were threatening to send troops into Niger. And Mali and everybody said, if you send troops into Niger, you are at war with us. Burkina Faso said the same thing. You send troops in there, it is not Niger that you're fighting all of us. What a wonderful statement. And after they backed down because they realized what there was going on in Nigeria and Ivory Coast and all these sort of people, I was very ashamed. These guys then formed the Alliance of Sahel States to be like, guys, going forward, this is how we are rolling. So if you attack Mali, you're attacking all of us. You attack Burkina Faso, you're attacking all of us. You attack Guinea, Niger, you're attacking all of us. That is NATO, guys. For those people who know what NATO is, Europe Europe did this after World War II. They've had this for 80 years? Why doesn't Africa have this? The essence of NATO was designed to protect Europe from possible attack from Russia. That was why it was created, from communism. That they were creating it listen, we can see how Russia is growing. We just had a war. We defeated Germany. Russia could be the next big enemy. We need to create something in case they come after us. Because Europe are all these small little countries. Russia is a massive country. And if Russia decided to go after one of these European countries, Germany is a tiny country. Russia is a whole different animal. So they realized that, listen, Russia weren't really that involved in this world war. They went, they really stayed out of it to a great degree. And the guys were like, listen, man, if Russia now they created NATO. Guys, that premise is the same premise for what ECOWAS should have promoted and for what Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have done with the Sahel Pact, and what all of us in West Africa should have joined. All of West Africa should be part of a NATO-like organization So that, hey, man, the world just knows that, look, if you come after Nigeria, you're fighting the entire West Africa. The concepts I'm talking to you guys about now, this is not rocket science. This is the way humans behave. In any gang, in any school, in any team, what happens is that this is my crew. Guys don't want to roll solo, because if you roll solo, it makes people with a crew makes you easier for them to pick off. But if he knows that in going after you, he has to go after 10 guys who roll with you in your crew, it's a different conversation. At the end of the day, they were pushed into a corner with this. And I actually feel that maybe they always had this plan when they had the coups. But I'm actually thinking that maybe they didn't. And maybe they got into a situation and they were like, guys, we have to do this because Africa isn't on our side. West Africa isn't supporting us. And I'm talking about the governments, not the people. All the people do. And you only need to go to social media to see that the people support them. But Africa, the governments aren't supporting us. We need to do this. You see, when they leave, there are economic and security repercussions to this. I mean, because they're not part of it now, ECOWAS can't rely on these countries to secure borders anymore because they are now interested in themselves. So there's an impact of that because you can't now, countries that are bordering these countries can't just call on them and be like, okay, this is what ECOWAS has mandated to do. You can't do that anymore. But for me, the way I look at it is a little bit deeper than, because I look at it and say, what is the source of these insurgencies? Do we really trust that these insurgencies are what they say they are? Do we believe that these insurgencies have nothing to do with the West, that the West are not supporting these? Because they have a history of doing that all around the world in terms of trying to destabilize a region, which is the reason why these people keep getting armed and they keep getting weapons. Where are these weapons coming from? How are they surviving? How are they eating? They don't have 9-to-5 jobs, so they must be sourcing resources from somewhere. That is when your wheels start turning and you start asking questions as to how is this happening? So the reality is that these people leaving ECOWAS, it almost gives them leeway to start investigating these things independently and doing what Niger were able to do in wiping these guys out quick. Because the powers that be that were there, like France and all these sort of people, were not really trying to do that. Then what you're doing is that you're setting a precedent for other African countries, because other African countries are really looking at this and saying, ooh, we want to do this, but we've been too scared to do this. But if these guys get away with this, and these countries are not the most powerful countries in West Africa, none of them are. If these baby countries get away with this, guys, I think we've got a play here. There's a lot of leaders in Europe who are not sleeping well. Macron is not sleeping well now, he's not. Because everything that is powering your empire is crumbling right before your eyes, and there is nothing you can do about it because you took the abuse and the insult too far, the disrespect too far, the exploitation too far. There's nothing you can do about it now because you can't walk this back. Once they've done this and they've been able to survive, which they have, they're like, oh, okay, are you going to now suddenly invade Africa? You see, this is the thing. Invading the Middle East and doing that is very, very different from invading black countries as white nations. That will not fly because of the history you have with these countries. Your own community will collapse your community. The French community will turn into civil war if France decided to go and invade a black African country. If America decided to go and invade a black African country, America will explode in and of itself. And they know it, that they're just not going to be able to pull that off. So for you to try and manufacture that, oh, this African country is a threat to our security, you're not going to be able to pull that off. You're not. So what it means is that you're in a very, very, very tight spot. And when I see the West and people in the West focusing on Middle East and all of these sort of things, and I'm looking at them like, guys, do you know what's happening in Africa? Like Israel and Palestine and all those people, they don't control your gas prices. They don't control your heating. They don't control your power. They don't control your luxuries. They don't control the cobalt and the silicon chips that go into your computers and your phones. That's all coming out of Africa. Your day-to-day welfare is supported and provided to you by Africa. And the prices you're paying and your standard of living is only affordable to you because of the exploitation of Africa. Because if you were paying fair market price for those resources, Africa would look like America and America would look like Congo. That's what it would be if things were actually the way they should be. So you don't understand that the status quo being maintained is absolutely essential for you to be able to pretend like there's nothing going on in Africa and living your life and playing on your PlayStation and going to watch movies and talking about what's happening on TMZ and what's happening at the Grammys and the Emmys and the Oscars and all of these sorts of things. Your ability to buy your fancy cars and to go in your Lexus and to go and to you get your Tesla is based on what's happening in Africa and maintaining the status quo. If a wave goes across the Western African region of countries doing what these countries have done, life in England and America and Brits and Germany and France will start looking very, 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 very different very quickly. Russia know this. Putin is not a fool. The things that he's done and the relationships he's been forming with all of these coup nations, Niger, Burkina Faso, why is he doing that? Because he understands that this is the future. This is the way that Africa is moving. And we want to support this because in supporting this, we will empower ourselves. And we need to show them that we respect them, quote unquote. And listen, I'm not somebody saying that, oh, we've got to trust everything. No, of course not. But they understand that the way that we approach Africa is not the way that the West does. We do not belittle them. We are not condescending. We do not patronize them. Like China, they come and build in Africa. That's what they're doing. It's like, we'll build for you for free. We'll build for you because we want you to be indebted to us in a different way. So that when we want to come and do deals with you, you say, well, they built our roads. They built our, as opposed to trying to control you. Now, listen, I'm not saying that in the future things won't change. I'm not saying that we should not watch our backs. Of course we do. But the point is that that is a different way of doing business. That is not the way the West has done business historically with Africa. It's not. Now, with Russia doing that, people like, look at what he's done with Burkina Faso. He's helping them build a nuclear power plant in Burkina Faso through Captain Traore. He's helping them with Captain Traore is building a gold refinery to refine gold in the country as well. He's helping Niger as well do their own stuff with nuclear power and gold and so forth. That's what Russia's doing. Russia is doing within the last 12 months what France did not do in 80 years. And since freedom, quote unquote freedom, the 60s, what's that, 60, 70 years, 80 years, you didn't do any of that for your African former colonies. Why is that? And you want to turn around and say Putin is the bad guy? Russia's the bad guy? Listen, trying to tell Africans that Putin and Russia are the villains is ridiculous, especially when those words are coming from the villains. At the end of the day, like Mandela said, your enemies are not our enemies. And the insult is the fact that you think you can tell us that your enemies are also our enemies. That's the insult. The fact that you think you can tell us who our enemies should be. That is the reason why the West go to such lengths to control our leaders, i.e. to tell us who the good and bad leaders are in Africa. Because that way you can then control who we call the villains and who we call good guys through those leaders that are essentially puppets. That's not flying anymore. And the beauty of these coups and the beauty of what these people have done by leaving ECOWAS is that they've created a situation where they're telling you that you don't control us anymore. We've cut the strings. The puppet master doesn't have control anymore. Because neocolonialism is a very real thing. And as I said, you watch my CFA video, it will explain to you why neocolonialism is a very real thing. Getting true independence requires these kinds of bold moves. We are going to have to get through a lot of fearmongers. And I've seen many of them. And fearmongers are Africans. They're black people. The white people are going to, they're going to do the fearmongering. Oh, you don't understand how dangerous this is for you to do this. I'm not block that out. But there's African and black fearmongers who are going to come in and be like, oh, what are they going to do? And well, they're going to really pay for this and it's going to be really bad for the people. And they're going to shut up. That attitude is the reason why we're still in the situation we're in Africa. These guys are heroes. Those three presidents of those three countries are heroes because they're setting a precedent. This is what it takes to be free. Freedom is never given. You take freedom. You don't beg for freedom. You don't go and ask and march for it and be like protesting for freedom. What the hell is that? Of course you're not ever going to get it. They'll just give you versions of things which allow people to still stay in control. Nobody just gives freedom to people, especially when your freedom is to their detriment, which this is. African freedom is to the detriment of the current framework of how the West is run. For people who are forward thinking in the West, understand how a fair symbiosis can exist between Africa and the West where everybody benefits. But that is very difficult for a lot of people to accept because the way everybody benefits is going to reduce the quality of living in Europe dramatically in the short term, dramatically. Like the quality of life in Europe will just drop like massively in the short term, and it will take it will take generations, not even one generation, generations for Europe and the West to come back to some kind of equilibrium with what Africa is going to be. It will take a while because everything needs to be restructured. So I would say this, guys, and I would say this, and this is in closing, I would say we are living in incredible times. As Africans, I am privileged to be living in this era because what we are living through is a bigger deal than the independence era in the 60s, because that wasn't true independence. What is being fought for now is actual freedom. What happened in the 60s, the 1960s and that era, was a rebranding of colonialism. Colonialism got rebranded, like slavery got rebranded with the 13th Amendment. Go and watch a book called The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander if you do not know what I'm talking about. It was rebranded. Slavery didn't end. It got turned to prisons. More black people are in prison than there ever were during slavery. So what are we talking about here? Because the rights of a slave are pretty analogous to the rights of a prisoner. I hope that people listening to this have taken on board the gravity of what is currently happening in West Africa, and the fact that it is on us in the diaspora out there in Africa, and to my Black American and Black British brothers and sisters, you are part of this too, because we are all one family. And to every other culture who gives a damn about humanity and gives a damn about the future of the world, doesn't matter what race or color you are, if you give a damn about having a peaceful, progressive world where everybody has a shot, where everybody can be happy, where everybody can have food, where everybody can have a future, where everybody has empathy, where everybody has a chance. This matters. It's just unfortunate that it takes YouTube to have conversations like this. It shouldn't be this way. What I'm saying should be coming out of the mouths of the people that lead African nations. Who the hell am I? I'm just some dude on the internet. I should not be the one saying all of this. I should be listening to guys who have been put in power in Africa saying what I'm saying. Because imagine if we had leadership saying this kind of stuff to millions upon millions upon millions of Africans. Where would we be today? Now all we've got is like YouTubers and TikTokers, people on Instagram and Twitter. Like I said, most people watching this video don't even know about this if you're not clued in or watching or following people like me. Guys, world wars started on less incidents. They started on smaller incidents. This that is happening is seismic because this is the beginning. It's like the first domino, I would say, even happened ages ago. Like once you started having those coups, and other people started seeing that and having their own coups. Those were the dominoes. And now things are just happening at such a rapid rate. I did believe that they were going to leave ECOWAS, but I did not think it was going to happen so quickly. And we are here, we're witnessing it happen, guys.